This is part 2 of our Producing for Specialty Market series. This will be the Preparing and Selling Wool to Fiber Enthusiasts. Last night focused on the sheep wool, and then tonight we'll focus on more of the off the sheep. So we are happy to take some questions and answers. So if you can type that in the Q&A box, we will get to those at each section and then again at the very end. Let me share my screen here. So this webinar is brought to you by the American Sheep Industry Association, and that's your national organization that represents the interests of U.S. sheep producers. And to become a member, you just have to join your local state sheep association. And that'll help you stay updated on weekly updates, monthly magazines, podcasts, webinars like this one. And then also join us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube by looking up Sheep USA and Experience Wool. And then also sheepusa.org is a great resource, has a lot of resources on it and contacts as well. And this webinar is being recorded, so be sure to look it up on either YouTube or sheepusa.org. Tonight we're very happy to have a couple of panelists with us. Mary Jean Packer is the founder and manager of Bat and Kill Fibers in New York. Bat and Kill Fibers provides roving, yarn, provides various dyeing techniques, finished knit woven items and felted items, so really a breadth of items that they can produce. And each day the mill produces about 100 to 150 pounds of yarn and employs 15 people. Before opening the mill, Mary Jean owned a local yarn store and has also helped organize international and domestic textile tours. She's also the founder and president of a cooperative that organizes a wool pool. And with a bachelor's in engineering and a master's in communication management, she also serves on the Empire Sheep Producers Board and is involved with many other projects. So anything else, Mary Jean?
That's good. Thank you. Thank you.
And I'd also like to introduce Ann Kreider. She is from Kreider Farms, a producer, and is also on our ASI executive board. So anything else you'd like to add, Ann?
Well, we've raised sheep all my life, 5th generation. And we've got the next 2 in on it. And I've done a lot with wool through the years. I do wool judging for several years. And I sell different types of wool products through my business. And I'm modest, so I'm not going to go any further.
That sounds good. I will do the same. I am Heather Pierce, and I'm the Wool Production and Specialty Markets Consultant for ASI. I've raised hand spinning sheep for many years, so I'm familiar with the producer end, and I'm still involved with several fairs and shows and judging. And I'm also a hand spinner and dabble in all sorts of fiber arts. And I'd also like to recognize Krista Rochford. She is also with ASI, and she is here tonight to be helping with questions. So we'll go ahead and do a poll again tonight. You know a little bit about us, and so it's probably similar to last night, but we might have a few new folks on tonight, and so I'd just like to know a little bit more about you. Go ahead and end the polling. It looks like, again, about half from the Northeast, several from the South and Midwest, and some from the Pacific West. And then a good majority, 70%, are producers. So the agenda for tonight, we'll be talking about, last night we talked about producing beautiful, clean, consistent, good staple length fleeces that are really important for the niche market. Tonight we're going to head off from there and talk about skirting, mills, and finding a mill and working with them, products that you might be able to sell, knowing your buyers, and then where to sell that wool. So we have a lot to cover, so we're going to move kind of quickly, but remember that this is all recorded. All right, Mary Jean, if you'd like to take over.
Okay, thank you. I will. Can you, I don't know how I can share my screen while you're, oh, just like that. I'm better at making yarn, you guys, than I am at doing PowerPoints. Are you seeing a PowerPoint though?
Looks good.
That's great. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about preparing your wool so that you can send it off to be processed, and some of the things that we look for in fiber coming in. And if I was better at PowerPoint, I would have highlighted that word skirted. And you know, we talked a lot last night about right at shearing, trying to do a quick skirting the minute it comes off the animal, and then another more detailed skirting before it goes to the mill. And I really can't emphasize that idea enough, because what we've discovered now is that good quality fiber in, you get good quality material back. And it's just, I can't really stress enough how important it is to have your fiber pretty clean coming in. And by clean, if I hold this up, are you seeing me too?
We are.
Great. So I'm talking about this clean. The tips look kind of bad though, but not to worry. Those will scour clean. They're just dirty sheep, but there's not a whole lot of vegetation in this, and that's really what I'm talking about when I say good quality in. We can get strong tips clean, not to worry. The other thing to see in this slide is the idea of how important communication is, because not everyone who works at a mill is very knowledgeable about different breeds of sheep and other fibers. So knowing every bag you send off needs to have your name in it, and what kind of material is in the bag. And notes like that will follow the order. Over here on the right, this is after that material was scoured. And right here is that same little note. The girls that do the scouring even brought it forward. So very important to communicate as well as keep it clean. So what we would typically do with a fleece, and Jeff talked last night about once he's shorn and looked through it, how he folds it and rolls it. Well, there it is, fold and rolled on the table, and we just unfold it, unroll it, and sort through it. And some of the things that we're looking for are making sure there's no second cuts, and checking those tips to make sure when we pull on them that they're not going to break off. And other pitfalls are, I would say, inconsistent fleece, where some parts are 2 inches and some parts are 4 inch. We can work with that, but it's not going to make as high a quality product for sure. That's it. Do we want to talk a little with our guests here about any questions at this point?
Yeah, I think one difference just to talk about real quick would be if you are skirting a fleece for selling it raw directly to the fiber artist, important that it's ultra clean and really well skirted. So in that second skirt, you'll spend the time to pick out as much vegetable matter as you possibly can, any second cuts, anything that is not of relatively the same length should all be removed. So it's really just the premium part of the fleece that could go to the fiber artist. And I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mary Jean, but the mills can handle maybe a little bit more variation than a fiber artist can. but it still needs to be a high quality fleece to get a high quality product back.
Well, that depends what you're going to make with it in terms of a product too. And if you want to brand and market it as rustic or farm blend, and you may get away with a lot more than if you're trying to sell it wholesale to a hand knitting yarn store, or if your fleeces have been selected by a designer for a farm to fabric finished product. You're going to want that to be super clean.
Any questions that have come in, Krista?
None yet. You're okay.
Great.
Well, I think if we go on to the mill tour, that may generate a few more questions. I could go back to my slides and go a little further into what goes on at a mill after your wool arrives there. Should we do that here?
That sounds, yep.
Okay, great. Okay, back to the AV club we go. So are you all seeing right where we left off?
Looks good.
Perfect. Next step, an operation of our size, 100 or 150 pounds of yarn a day, we scour most of the wool here. Bigger farms may actually be shipping their sorted wool right to a place like Chargers in South Carolina to have it scoured and then have the scoured wool sent to us. But at our scale, we're doing scouring right here on site with incredibly hot water. And we just air dry. If you were going to Chargers, they, of course, dry with a machine. But either way, it's important to keep moisture in the wool. You don't want it at a 0% moisture content. So we feel that air dry does a fine job with that. I want to point out the buy it now button. These are multi-purpose slides. And the other day I was a speaker at Rhinebeck, and I had been asked in that talk to point out the different steps in the process where it was a merchantable product. So you don't have to push buy it now or anything, but it's just our cue for me to remind you, the people listening who are raising fiber animals, that this is a place where you could take this fiber back from us. You don't have to go all the way to yarn at a mill. You can say, I just want you all to wash and dry it for me, and now I think I can sell it. And I don't know where we're going to get, I think maybe a little later on, but let me just say it, and we'll probably say it a few more times, that as, in my opinion, as a farmer with fiber animals, the least processing you can do and still sell it, the better. Because the least processing means you have spent the least amount of money. So if you can sell a fleece to the hand spinners for $20 a pound, that's what you should do. If you think you could sell it for $20 a pound if only the tips were clean, then you should send it to a mill and have it washed and then sell it. So each place we talk tonight, keep in mind that that's a spot where if you have a market, you should stop processing there. And I have some more slides along the way. If you want to stick with me just for a second, I'll show you a couple of more steps. And we have a little video too where you can see these machines run. So after the fiber has been washed and dried, we put it on this conveyor belt into, see the blue arrows? It goes from right to left into a machine called a picker. And from there into a carder. And we have a video. We'll go into more detail on both of those. And then, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze, or I'm trying not to. I guess I pulled it off. Thanks. So then the roving that comes off of the card, in our case, goes into a machine called a pin drafter. And we may want to talk in more detail during the questions after the video about woolen spun versus worsted spun, because these slides right here that I just went kind of quickly through, looking at that roving, looking at that material on the right coming off the carder, is a little different between a woolen mill and a worsted mill. We spin on the worsted system here at Battenkill Fibers. And there's no real wrong or right way to spin material, but a lot depends on what kind of wool we're working with, and also what kind of finished products you and your customers are looking to produce. So I'm going to play a little video for you right here, I hope. We're right at the edge. We're right at the edge of my skills, though. So please stick with me while I see if I can find my video. I think I have. Are you seeing one? So this is the next step in the process. We're taking the washed and dried fiber and adding a little bit of conditioner, and then we're feeding it into this machine called the picker. This is Tim. He runs the picker, and the carder. He's been with us almost 4 years, and we sure appreciate his attention to detail. It really makes a difference in having a very consistent product that's really well blended. So after the material comes out of the picker, we start it here in the first hopper of the card. And this is a 43-foot journey for material. It comes through here in a series of rollers where it's blended and tumbled and lands in this second bin, which is also just more of opening, blending. It's really good when we work with blends. Right now that's an alpaca wool blend we're putting through. So from here it lands on essentially a little scale inside of here. And when all the material is uniformly compressed, it comes out onto this feed table. And it's going to go from the feed table. Those feed dogs are going to grab the material, and it's going to go through a series of a giant roll with workers and strippers, they're called. And it's so different than hand carding. We're just aligning the fibers, only the material's moving around two giant rollers with these sets of workers and strippers. And finally, it comes off here on this doffer, which grabs it off the inside roll and pulls it down onto this table. And at this point, we have batting. The next step in the process is going through one of our two pin drafters. And people who haven't been to visit for a while haven't seen this pin drafter. We just got it 3 or 4 years ago. I'm really pleased with adding a second pin drafter. It's a big part of being a semi-worsted processor. So here's that same beautiful thin wool that we had shown you at the carder, and it's coming up and out of the can, and then it feeds through these combs here, and that's the part of the pin drafter, the pin part. These combs are set quite far apart because the fiber is pretty heavy that we're feeding in here. The whole while what we're trying to do is unify and connect. And this is what it ends up looking like. It's in pretty good condition. It's still got that beautiful shine. We're starting to pick out a lot of the pieces of vegetation that didn't come out in the card. So this is our 4-can pin drafter. It was the first machine we had. We actually got this in 2009 before we even had a building, and we salvaged it in the fire and we rebuilt it. So what it's doing is just like at the two-head, only now it's getting the material very fine. It's just about ready for spinning. This is Barb, and Barb's been running this machine for almost 5 years, and it's her attention to detail that makes our yarn so especially smooth. Okay, so there's seeing all the parts moving. We can keep going a little if anybody had a question about what they'd seen so far, or we can go on to the spinning steps.
We've got a few questions here for you. First one is, when is VM too much? What about VM that has been pulverized into teeny tiny pieces? Is the fleece not worth sending to a mill?
Teeny tiny VM has a good chance of falling out in all those processes you've been seeing in the card and in pin drafting, or just going right even to the spinner. The other thing has to do with color. If you've got white wool with brown veg, it's going to appear as flecks, but if you're thinking of dyeing that white wool, you might get away with it, especially in some darker tones. It's really hard to hide yellow straw in brown wool, though. That's probably the hardest one. When it's a really rich, dark wool, that veg really shows up in it.
Another one here, is there any benefit of scouring individual fleeces at home before selling to a fiber artist?
Yes and no. And the fiber artists that you deal with, some of them may really want that authentic hands-on experience of doing absolutely every step themselves. On the other hand, there are some fiber artists who think they want that experience, and after about 5 minutes decide not, or they'll get your beautiful fleece and ruin it from agitating or putting it in cold water, or all these issues. So it's almost like at yarn stores where you sell yarn by the skein and people ask you to ball wind it and you do. You can have that kind of discussion with your customer and say, you know, I'm selling you this in the grease. If you would like, we can offer you scouring service. One thing that we found in working with scoured wool, scoured by the customer that comes into the mill, it's very hard to release the big vegetation if they haven't really opened it up very carefully before they wash it at home. So all of these tips, if the home washer has not really worked hard on pulling that apart, when we go to process it, it won't really be clean. Buried inside those tips will still be dirt and grease, and it's just that much tougher to ever get it really clean. So some pros and cons of washing it yourself, but a good home washer, and we have a few who are our customers who have done a fabulous job, and they save a tremendous amount on their custom processing costs. And I would take that the next step to say they were selling that as washed fleece. They could add quite a lot of value for offering a truly well-washed fleece.
At what micron count do you recommend pin drafting?
At what micron count? So this is pin drafted material here. And one of the things I really love, I don't know what my skills are here for showing things, but one of the things I really love about pin drafting fiber is a lot of what we see here in the East is a very mixed flock. We get from the same farm, we might get wool that's barely 3 inches long and some that's 5 inches long, some that's 23 micron and some that's 35 micron, and they want it all put together. And so pin drafting, I've found, really has this great unifying connect. And that's kind of what I meant in the video when I was saying that. Sounds like I'm planning a travel itinerary, but it's kind of the same idea as making this material travel is, I found, is just really important.
I think let's stop there for now on the questions, just so we can keep rolling along.
Okay, good. We may have to play more video while I get a quick drink of water, so let's do that. So this is the material that came from the drafter, and now we're going to set up the spinner to run. It's coming through here, then we'll lock the arm down, and then what will happen is the material will thread through here, and we'll put it on a bobbin, and this table, as it's being spun, this table will rise and fall, filling the bobbin uniformly until we're all the way to the top, and then we'll change the bobbins and keep going. This is our first spinner. We got this right at the time we opened in 2010, and we've been doing work on it ever since. We love it because we can control the rate at which each roller turns by just one gear change. And so why we want that control is it enables us to take the sliver at pretty much any length, any width, and by how much we draft it, we control the weight of yarn we make. We can make this into fingering, we can make this into Aran. It's all in how fast these rollers are turning with regard to each other. The same with the twisting. We can put a twist in this, it's 3 twists per inch, 8 twists per inch, whatever the customer wants and whatever's best for the fiber. This is a real, look at the shine in this. This is a beautiful border luster, and we'll probably only twist this at 4 or 4.5 twists per inch to keep the yarn strong but still nice and soft. Okay, we have just a couple of slides to show what we do once that spinning is completed, and then we will have wrapped up our mill tour. So we were here at the spinners, which I went through kind of quickly, and now here are the final steps. That single ply yarn gets twisted into 2-ply, 3-ply, or 4-ply yarn, and these are things that different breeds of sheep do better at different twists and different plies. There's just certain things that some breeds of sheep aren't really ever going to make. And vice versa, there's certain things that a breed of sheep really shines in its production. And, you know, that could be an hours-long talk. Last night we mentioned an excellent resource book by Deborah Robeson called The Fleece and Fiber Source Book. And ASI also has some really good materials for farmers about best ways to process different breeds of sheep. So that's something for you all, sheep farmers and fiber enthusiasts who are buying a fleece, to be thinking about all the while of what is the best preparation for the wool. Or if you know what you want to make, maybe if you're shopping for wool or shopping for sheep, you need to be getting the sheep or the fleece that's going to give you what you want to make. And then from here, just to finish up our mill tour quickly, we can take the bobbins of plied yarn and wind them into skeins. And we can also take the bobbins of yarn and wind them onto cones. And later on, we're going to talk a little about some of the machine knit, machine woven products that would come from coned yarn. Usually if you're selling to the hand knitters, you sell it on a skein. And if you're going for additional processing, you sell it on the, or have it put up on the cone. And then finally, there's the world of dyeing. And again, we could do a whole 1-hour webinar in the world of dyeing, differences between dyed and the wool, which you obviously do way back before you ever card, to kettle dyeing and hand painting, which are techniques you apply to the skeins after they've been skein wound, and then cone dyeing, or commercial skein dyeing, which through amazing, again, you could do a whole talk on this pressurized dyeing, the whole cone is dyed as one solid color. So I'm going to stop there and see what else we have for questions on our little tour of the mill. And there, I have a long video. These are just little clips from that. If anyone wants to take the whole 15-minute tour, batandkillfibers.com has the whole tour on there.
Here's a couple of really quick questions. For scouring, what temperature do you use to wash the wool, and do you use a conditioner? What is in it?
We like 185 degrees. Our plumber would like us to like 165 degrees. And because it's a real challenge to keep water that runs really fast at 185 degrees, our boiler is larger than our scouring area. So we use very hot water, and people who are trying this at home, don't be tempted to agitate. We just let that wool soak, and we buy a commercial scouring agent from a distributor of things like that to textile mills that's in the Carolinas. And whoever's asking that detailed question, if you are wanting to do it at our scale, just email me and I'm happy to share the contact information. Then there was a question about conditioning, and that's like our hair. After we wash it and it's all squeaky clean, then we start putting products back into it to help us process our hair. Well, it's the same thing with helping us process the fiber. And you saw Tim using a spray at the picker, and that's just where we have started adding that conditioner. And it's really to help not have static as it's going through all those rollers and the rest of the mill, and to just help the fibers hold together and align a little more, which is why when the skeins are finished, you need to wash those skeins before you knit with them to allow them to bloom. And then we do not wash what we put on cones, because that's almost like we had waxed that a little bit, and it makes it for the weavers and machine knitters, helps that keep your static down even in their processes. And then after the fabric or garment is made, then they will wash it, and that'll allow it to bloom at that point.
But you are processing at home. There are several things that you can buy to help wash it. I like to use Dawn. It's easy to get and it works really well. So
just rinse it out.
Yes, several rinses and vinegar. I think I'm going to share my screen again, and then just some things to note. Usually a small mill will take a raw fleece and turn it into yarn, although some mills have the capability of doing more processed items, actual items that people could buy. And some considerations when finding a mill. Make sure you get good recommendations. Ask your friends, other people who are using which mills, because those really do make a difference. Some have more experience than others for mills. And then ask them to see their final products. You may or may not like their final product, and you want to know that ahead of time before you spend all the time to process it. And then also ask what range of fiber they specialize in. Some will be really good at fine wools, some will be good at coarse wools. And then just a second, I'll let you, Mary Jean, talk about the more woolen versus worsted systems. And then also ask how far out they're scheduling. Some will be scheduling a year out before you can actually take your fleece in there. And some are a little bit faster than that. And if they are farther out, then you should think about storage, because either you or they will have to store that. Would you like to talk about the woolen and worsted, Mary Jean?
I think we should. So certain fibers, especially fine micron, fine wools, are very soft, and it won't hurt them to, you don't get too scratched when that rubs against you. But if you're working with Cotswold or Lincoln or Romney, you want to do everything you possibly can to minimize the loose ends. So the whole goal there is to comb them like we had looked at before, to align them. So in a woolen mill, the material comes right from the carder, gets prepared into pencil roving, and that pencil roving goes right to the spinner. In worsted processing, the material coming off the carder gets gathered down, combed, put through a comber, and then back into the pin drafter. The combed top goes back into the pin drafter and comes out ready to be spun. We are what they call semi-worsted because we don't have a comber, although we have one coming on a slow boat from India. If we do this next year, knock on wood, you'll be able to see our combed top machine. Ironic that we have to send to the Far East to get an American machine and have it shipped back here. But that is what we're doing. So anyhow, that would be making us fully worsted if we had the comb top preparation. So which to put in what? A lot depends on your finished use. If you want something next to the skin, you either need fine micron, or if it's a coarser wool, you probably should spin worsted or semi-worsted. If you want to make something fold or felted, like thick blankets, hunting coat fabric, any kind of felted item, woolen spun is really good because with all those loose ends, when you go to felt that, it's going to really grab together. If you want to make anything with a lot of drape, not so much squish, more drape, especially if you have longer staple fiber, then you want to look at worsted and semi-worsted.
Great. Thank you, Mary Jean.
You're welcome.
All right, and we'll move on to products to sell. So luckily, Mary Jean has touched on a lot of these already. You can sell your whole raw fleece, but it does need to be really high quality and well skirted. And usually you'll present this in a clear plastic bag, like we talked about last night, and then sold by the pound. And if you are shipping these, then it's helpful. You can use your vacuum to suck out a lot of the air. You don't want to do too much, but suck out most of the air, and it makes it a lot smaller for shipping. And then you can also sell a raw partial fleece. Again, it needs to be high quality and well skirted, but you can sell smaller portions of the fleece. And you might want to do that if the fleece is really variable, say the breech end is a lot coarser than somewhere else, you could separate off that breech and sell that. And also, the buyers might be looking for something smaller. It only takes a couple of pounds to make a sweater. So they might not be looking for a whole 10-pound fleece. They might be really happy with just a 3-pound fleece. So it gives you some options. And those are also usually sold by the pound. And then processed items. I have clean wool and asterisk. Most people, you don't often see just clean wool, washed wool for sale, but you can. And then you can also do roving, pin drafted or pencil roving, yarn, and these are usually sold by the ounce or by the skein. And over to the table on the right, you can see what the average processing costs are. And this is for the washed, finished weight. So obviously washing is $9 per pound, and that's in the grease weight. But for the rest of them, like roving, it's the cost is by the finish, so it includes all of the washing and processing to get to that roving in that $18 per pound. And like yarn, a skein of yarn won't be $40, but it would $40 per pound. And know that these prices really vary across the United States, and then also depending on what extra things you might be paying for, such as skirting or washing, extra washings, extra pickings, plying, what type of weight the yarn is. Depending on the weight, it may cost you more or less. And then some other processing options are batting and felting and dyeing. Again, as Mary Jean said, usually if you can sell that raw fleece, that's a nice, easy way to go and get you a good profit. But if you do need to sell more, these are some good options. And again, the prices vary, so you could add extra for the different dyeing processes. Those are range from $4 up to $20 per pound. And then again, you can think about selling actual items. So whether you decide to do it by hand, or if you want to have a mill do it, you could do something like dryer balls, nice, easy items to felt, easy to stick in your booth at a fair or fiber festival. Knitted and crocheted items are popular. Felted items, woven items, really anything. Especially if you decide to do something unique, that can be really helpful. And how do you decide what to process? I think one of the biggest things is consumer demand, like we've talked about again. If you can sell it raw, great, sell it that way. If someone is really wanting yarn, then you can go that route. And then also consider processing it if it's an older fleece that you need to get out of your barn because you need some space, or it might discolor some. And then slightly lower quality fleeces. So a processing mill can again handle just a little bit more vegetable matter than a hand spinner might be able to, or maybe a little bit more variable in staple length. A mill might be able to handle that a little bit better. And then if it really is a lesser quality, you consider taking it to a wool pool, gathering it with some others so you can sell it in bulk, or discarding it in some way. Getting to know your buyer is really important. I think we're gonna keep moving along and then take questions at the end. I think there's a lot of questions, so we'd be happy to answer those. But we'll keep moving on for now. And so getting to know your buyers is really important. It helps you if you can market to your buyers. So customers are really wanting to know more. They want to know more about the sheep and maybe the micron, what they can use that wool for. So providing an informational tag on the side is really helpful. So have it say what it weighs, how much the price is, maybe the animal's name, something like that. So whether a buyer is buying it or if you're sending it to the mill, either way it has that informational tag. And buyers also want a personal connection to the wool. So tell them your story or tell them your sheep's story. They want that personal connection. They want to know where their items are coming from. And also help to guide them to appropriate products. So if they are looking for something that they're going to do close to the skin, guide them to something finer. Or if they want to make a nice rug, maybe a little coarser is better. And never sell a low quality fleece to a beginner fiber artist. They're going to be really unhappy with it and then not want to come back to wool at all. So for the entire industry, really make sure that help them to find the right product for them. And then all of this is also going to help you produce a better product and grow your wool a little bit better. So some outlets. It could be on the farm. You could sell raw or processed really easily this way. You could either do a farm store or a special event. And this allows those buyers to be more connected. They're seeing where that wool comes from and lets them maybe see the sheep, really gaining that personal connection. And a lot of times you get repeat customers this way. But do make sure that you keep your farm in good condition. They're somebody else coming onto your farm, and they will be noticing things. So try to keep it in good condition, and then consider when they're coming. You might not want them to come during a shearing time. Sheep do get nicked, and they're fine, but not everybody understands that. And so just be careful about when you invite them to your farm. And then you can also have a farm website. So the nice thing about that is that you can really customize it and tailor it and showcase items that you specifically have. You can sell one sheep's fleece on there and really showcase that. And you can also share stories and videos and extra information. And it can be found by anyone, anywhere. Although it does require some time and know-how to create and maintain a website. So a lot of them are free. You just need to find either yourself or someone else that's savvy enough to make a website, and they can be free. And it's just driving the traffic to the website as well is important. So again, as you see in these pictures, the ones on the bottom, they are descriptive enough that you know what you're looking for. And then also getting to see the sheep, I think a lot of people like, and getting to see the name. And so a nice, attractive website that helps build that personal connection is great. And then social media is an option. You can post your page and then share it, and that allows them to, if maybe they're interested in that place but might want something just a little bit different, then they can go back to your page and see what else you might be selling. And it also allows that post to be shared to others. And a lot of times it doesn't allow direct searching. If they already like your farm, it's just going to pop up for them again and again, which is great. But do know that some sites do not allow animal products to be sold. So you'll often see a sheep is being rehomed instead of sold. And so wool falls into that category where you may or may not be able to sell it on Facebook. And then online sites, ones like Etsy and eBay and Amazon, they're nice in that they make payment really easy, and also shipping. They'll help you with shipping labels. So in some ways it makes that really easy, but it can be really hard to get traffic and get people directed to that. So to pop up at the top of the page, it takes a lot of good reviews of that product or your farm to pop up at the beginning. And there are some fees that go along with that. Etsy is a couple of cents per month per item that you have posted. And then local shops. It's really nice sometimes for local shops in that they can showcase local wool. People, it's all about local and getting that connection again. But prices can be hard to compete with commercial prices. So commercial yarn probably is going to be a lot cheaper than what you would be able to sell the yarn for. So that can be a challenge. And then sometimes local stores have said that it's difficult for them to manage the two types and keep them separated. So they may or may not be interested in doing that. And then mills. It requires a lot less time and effort. You don't have to store it for so long. They take care of all the marketing. So it's really a nice, easy option to go with. But you do usually end up with a little bit lower price because they are taking care of all of those options for you. And then farmers markets. Really for them, you don't often have too many spinners coming or felters coming to the farmers market. So yarn or finished products are best. There's a lot more knitters or crocheters out there than there might be a spinner. It can also be difficult to sell big amounts of it, so it can be helpful to join another vendor so you can sell more and not have to have your own separate booth. And then fairs and festivals. They're specially aimed right at fiber artists, so your direct audience. And really you can sell any kind of product. You could go from raw to roving to an actual item all in the same booth, and you're again directing it right to your target audience. And so you can usually sell those for a little bit higher prices. And it also allows for that interaction between you and them, and they just get to know you a little bit better. But it does require a good high quality wool. They know what they're looking at, they know what they're looking for, so it takes that good high quality. And then shows. The great thing about them is that you get the professional opinion that you and the buyer gets to hear. So if your fleece is standing out in a show, usually the buyers will go running back to help to try to buy that fleece. And then you also get some feedback as the grower about what you could improve on and what you're doing really well at. And so these are usually they're shown and then sold raw as whole fleeces. And they do have to be less than 1 year old for most show rules. And then wool pools. If again, for those skirtings, or if you have a bulk amount of something, it's easier to sell bulk things to a mill or larger buyers. So working with other growers around you to create more volume can be really helpful. You usually get a little bit lower prices for them, again, the bulk items, and it does have to be raw wool. And so I'd like to stop here and ask Anne, could you share with us what your experience is, what has sold best for you and where?
Yeah, there we go. Had a hard time getting it to unmute. I've done a lot of things, but I also am aware of a lot of other people who have done things. The big thing about all of this, if you're going to sell your fleeces, you need to be comfortable with what you want to do. And once you find what you like doing, specialize in it. And why I say that is because I know there was one family, they had a flock of Lincolns, and they were trying to sell fleeces. Well, that was all fine and dandy, but they didn't think they were selling enough to really make it feasible. So they started playing around a little bit, and with colors and dyeing, well, they still continued to sell the greased and washed fleeces, but they specialized literally in cotton candy colors. And they were making a business out of this, and they have done quite well. Another lady that I know, I've known two ladies who have done this. They've had flocks of around 30 to almost 40 ewes. And they specialized in just that flock. And both of these women have made very good profit off of those few sheep. With a lot of people say, well, you can't make money off of sheep. Well, these gals did, and did a tremendous job. But what they did was, after they sheared, yes, they sold greased fleeces. Yes, they had some wash fleeces, but they had things processed. They had a variety of options for people to purchase. And then they would also make a finished product. It might be a shawl, a sweater. One gal even knitted a dress. And when they they didn't go to a lot of festivals. They might go to the one gal, both of them. They were from different states. They only went to one festival each. And by the time that festival was over with on Sunday afternoon, they didn't have much to load up in their truck to go home. But they just specialized in having a variety of items for their customers. And they did have a lot of repeat customers. Another one is I've done a lot, I don't know how many thousands of dryer balls, which takes time, can get messy, but people love them once they figure them out. And I'll tell you what, when you go to sell them, you're always going to get somebody that says, I can get it cheaper somewhere. And I'm going, but do you know where the wool came from? And they always stop because they have no clue. There's a lot of dryer balls sold out there that come from all different parts of the country. And my selling point on my dryer balls is I always have 1 or 2 dryer balls that I have literally cut in half so that they can see that it's 100% wool and that there's no bugs or who knows what from another country in it. And I don't say that to them, but it gives them the visual. Along the line of dryer balls, I have a friend who is big into the essential oils. And I have heard for years, oh, well, can I add oils? Yes, you can add an oil. And I've almost made a business off of selling dryer balls through this one gal. I'm constantly getting calls. So-and-so's going to get a hold of you. She wants dryer balls. And I may get a couple a week, or there'll be sometimes one lady will come and buy one for everybody she knows practically. But dryer balls, I tell you what, everybody ought to try them because then it's experience. And you find out the best way that works for you. And if you can get somebody like this gal that sells the essential oils that keeps sending me customers, you can get by on just dryer balls if you wanted to. But, and on the dryer balls, at first, everybody thought you could get by with one. Well, one doesn't do the job. And most people sell them in groups of 3. There are some that sell them differently, and that's fine. But I found that the 3 works the best, and you just sell them in a package of 3, and everybody's happy. And believe it or not, you'll get a lot of repeat customers, because I have through the years. Then let's go on here. Oh, another gal. What she's done is she's gone beyond all these things. She'll sell wash fleeces. She sells the grease fleeces, all the different parts. I don't think she does as much roving and yarn, pencil roving. She does sell roving. But what she's done is she's made simple products out of these things, and that's what she sells. Now she'll have little fleece stockings, or, oh goodness, I can't even think. She just had a big show last weekend and had pictures of her Christmas ornaments. She does the needle felting, and that's what helps sell her other fleeces also. Yep, and socks. I'm getting to that here in a minute. There's one gal I know that she decided that all this stuff was a bunch of whatever. And so she got into it even deeper by getting a sock making machine. And now her big thing is all she makes is socks. And you can be as creative as you want with your colors. You can have that all done through somebody like Mary Jean, have it all washed and done into yarn. So all you have to do is run it through your machine. And she does a fabulous business with that. I'm trying to think what else I have here. Oh, on the fleeces. There's the shorn fleeces, yes. But there's one thing that was mentioned earlier. Don't ever throw away any bit of your fleece, because that may have your second cuts or your belly cuts or the stuff that you would skirt out. Bag it in a garbage bag. Everybody's looking for some natural thing to use these days. And what you do is you bag her up and maybe sell 2 garbage bags for $5 or $10 as mulch. And what's nice about it, it holds moisture. It's not the perfect answer, but it's natural and it's going right back into the earth. And people like that. So birds, another thing is birds. I had a superintendent of a school come to me one year, and they had a class that always did some spring project to sell, to make money for something. And they were younger kids, and we put our heads, she said, what can we do with the wool? And I'm like, oh my goodness. So we put our heads together, and they purchased a number of these vine type balls that are kind of open. They're made with some kind of vine, and they're open. And the kids would tie a string to those, or a ribbon, and then they'd put wool in those balls, and they called them bird nesting balls, because then birds could come, grab a little bit of fiber out of those balls, and go put it in their nest when they were building their nest. So there's a lot of different creativity and process out there in products and how to sell it. One person I wanted to mention about was this gal was in FFA at the same time my son was. They showed against each other, and the whole family's good friends. Well, her FFA project, in which she ended up going to state and winning an award, was selling fleeces on in Facebook groups. And she made a bunch of money doing that. And it became a good project, and she kept good records, and she's done quite successful with that. Let's see what else we got here. One other thing, if you want to go beyond that with your booth, and you do process lamb also with your sheep, another aspect to keep in mind, which would be a whole nother session, would be save your pelts from your sheep, because there's a lot of things that can fit right into sales with all your fleeces out of those pelts. And check my notes here. The big thing is be comfortable with what you're doing. If you don't know, do your research. Explore Google, explore sheep magazines. If you can't go to a Fiber Fest, find out who's the festival, find out who's there, look them up, ask them questions. Just ask questions all you can and try different things out until you find something you're comfortable with. Because if you're not going to continue, and it'll go by the wayside. You have to enjoy what you're doing. And I'll leave you with that.
That's very well said. Good advice, Anne. Thank you. And I think we're going to touch on that in just a sec, just as you said. So just going back to last night, what's next? What are the next steps? Something to think about, how can you grow higher quality wool? So the big things we talked about breeding and managing for like contamination and vegetable matter, the staple length, how sound is your wool? Does it have any breaks or tenderness issues? What color is it? The fiber diameter and what it's best suited for. Lock structure, crimp, handle, luster, making sure that it doesn't have any other fibers like hair or medullated fibers or black fibers in a white fleece. And then weight and yield are important. And then do your research, just as Anne said. Know your buyers. Where are your buyers and what are they looking for? What products are you interested in selling? Just like Anne said, if you're not enjoying it, then you won't stay with it, and it's probably going to be hard to get buyers as well. And where are you interested in selling? If you're not comfortable on Facebook, but you enjoy the fairs and festivals, then that's great. And finding a mill that works for you, because at some point you're probably going to end up working with a mill. So find one that's works for you. And then maybe something that's unique, whether you want to provide a whole array of items or something specific. Find something that's unique and you can sell. And then I think, is there anything else, Mary Jean, that you wanted to touch base on products that you might sell?
I think Anne did a fabulous job on talking about some of the lower price point products, but depending on the quality of your flock and what you have for a market, you might want to go all the way to a lap robe or even full-size woven blankets by working with a mill that offers weaving, or finding a weaver after your yarn has been made. And then we did talk briefly about knitted items. There's a lot of ways to really add value to some fiber that might otherwise not have much of a use. Believe it or not, our single most popular item are these gloves. These little gloves that we started out making them with darn near the wool off the floor in the mill, just for the people who work here to wear. And we're part of a group called the Hudson Valley Textile Project, in which we try to go all the way from farm to finished object, all within the Hudson Valley of New York State and Vermont. And we found a glove knitting company in the capital region, the Albany area. And so the furthest this has traveled is to Albany and back, which is about a 40-mile trip. So try to find some product like that that is good for your region where you can be a part of it. This is another one. It's called the Hudson Farm Cloth Project, and a group of farmers in the Southern Adirondack Fiber Producers Cooperative, working with another weaver, had all the way to a very finished product. It's even stuffed with wool in a removable fill. So things that you can do with what you have where you are on your place on the land really make a lot of sense.
Thank you, Mary Jean. And thank you, Mary Jean and Anne, for being on tonight. I think especially being from different regions of the United States and specializing as a producer or in the mill really helps us understand a lot of different areas. So thank you both. And then, something else, Anne is in the Midwest. And so if you have any questions about high humidity areas, Anne might be a great resource to answer any questions on that. So I think we'll go to our questions now.
I know we're running short on time, so I'll just do a few quick ones. A couple on processing. When air drying, do you need to control the humidity in the room?
Yes, if it's too humid in the room, it'll never dry, kind of like your hair. So the use of fans is great for moving that air around. But really, the bigger problem with washing and drying fiber is getting it too dry, not the opposite of having it too wet.
For those cleaning their own fleeces, what are your thoughts on the pros and cons of the suent method?
I've had customers bring it in that they've done that too, and it's been very clean. It certainly works at a small scale, and if nothing else, it's great for your kids or the neighbor kids to be a part of that process.
I think I have not done it myself, but friends of mine who have. It takes some time, and I think it gets smelly, so say keep it outside. It's where you take a raw fleece and essentially let itself clean itself in a bag. And so it can be smelly, but if you do it right, it can result in amazingly clean fiber.
What are your recommendations for those with 18 micron and lower yarn? Can most mills handle that fine of a yarn? Or I'm sorry, that fine of a fiber?
We don't see a lot of 18 micron fiber in the East. I am aware of a mill that is similar in size and scope to ours in Buffalo, Wyoming, that really has done a fabulous job with merino and rambouillet. I think the earlier slide from Heather that talked about ask people who live by you where they're sending their fiber really makes good sense, and also ask to see samples of the capabilities of the mill.
And just a couple more. Would it be fair to test blend various kinds of wools at home and then hand spin them to get a sense of how it would look if it was done commercially?
Yes, excellent idea for you to be practicing, especially on blends, be it blends of breeds or blends of color. We get a lot of people who want like a light oatmeal from a farm blend, but they bring us 5 pounds of white and 50 pounds of gray, and they wonder why it's not paler. So definitely practicing color blends as well.
And there's just a comment here, a great comment. It says, reputation makes a big difference. Fiber artists communicate with each other and word can get around if you sell a flawed fleece. And can you guys talk a little bit about minimums, how small a batch can typically be used for mills?
You really need to meet with the mill that you're thinking of working with and ask that question. There's mini mills that have like maybe 8 spindles on their spinner, and they can probably take a pretty small small batch. And then there's mills that much bigger than our little mill, where we just have 2 spinners with maybe we have 100 spindles on one and 60 on the other. There's mills with hundreds of spindles, and they're going to have a very different minimum. So you really need to talk with the mill about minimums.
And I'll make this the final question. Is it true that coned yarn does not have a final wash that is done with skeins, meaning that the knitting will have major differences in their gauge from the knit swatch to the washed swatch?
So we can certainly take yarn that's been processed, put it in a skein, wash the skein, and put that up onto a cone to send to a knitting mill. But a knitting mill doesn't want that done with it because they're used to receiving the yarn still very tightly compressed from the plying packed onto the cone. And so at a machine knitting mill, they'll do things like this, called a knit down, where they'll take that wool that's on a cone and knit just a swatch this big, and then they'll note all the ways they've finished it. This was washed with a softener added, and so different notes came from this knitting company. So if you're going to hand knit from coned yarn, you really need to do a swatch, and right away you'll know if it's been washed or not, and just have to allow for the bloom if it's not been washed.
Great. Thank you again, Mary Jean and Anne. We hope you guys, yeah.
There's a question in the chat box about is there a capability for smaller mills to process lanolin? And the fellow that I've dealt with for years with a wool cream said there's only 2 major processors that do lanolin of any size anymore, and there's a little bit of a process for mills to do it. Do you do it, Mary Jean?
No, it's a lot more than a little bit of a process.
Right.
Because of the chemical that we use to scour with, it emulsifies. It removes the lanolin chemically. And so when we started the company, I looked into the reclaim process, and there's a chemical you can buy to mix with the wastewater that would help pull the lanolin back out. But I feel like we're in the yarn business, not in the skin products business.
Right. I know Chargeurs does it, but I think the only way you can get it is by 50-gallon drum. So I doubt if there'd be any small mills that would do that process.
That's a good reminder, though, that it's not just wool and pelts. There's lanolin is a great byproduct used in a lot of cosmetics. So. Well, I think that will wrap us up for tonight. I hope you guys have enjoyed these webinar series brought to you by ASI, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Wow.